Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to talk about how you can recognize and play melodies by ear so that as soon as you hear a melody you can instantly play it on your instrument or transcribe it in whatever form you like. Everything I'm going to say will also apply when you have a melody in your head and you want to transcribe it or play it on your instrument. Absolutely everyone can learn to do this. There's no superhuman skills involved, and you can learn this independently from your age or whatever. Surprisingly to most of you, the approaches I'm going to suggest won't require thinking of any intervals or anything like that. Indeed, I don't suggest thinking of intervals when recognizing or playing melodies by ear, or in general, I don't suggest thinking of intervals when approaching ear training. That's because our perception of musical pitch is context dependent, and that has been shown by countless scientific studies. I know that maybe these are just a bunch of words that don't make sense to you right now, but I've made a very thorough video on that with all the scientific studies quoted and everything you need to know about why intervals are not the best approach to ear training and why is indeed the worst approach to ear training. And you can find everything in that video. I'm going to put a link in the description section below, or you can find it up here maybe. I really suggest you go watch it before going on with this video. Last thing before going on with the video, our ear training course is available right now. There already are a bunch of students that are getting amazing results with it. I really suggest you check it out. See the link in the description section. Getting back to the main topic of this video, there are three main ways we can adopt to effectively recognize and play melodies by ear. All of them are based on recognizing the tension and rest sensations that each note assumes inside the tonality, inside the key in which the melody is being played. I call these three approaches the three perceptual mechanisms of note recognition skills. Let's see them in detail. The first mechanism of note recognition is directly recognizing the note by feeling its key color, the sensation that it assumes inside the key, the sensation of tension or resolution that it assumes inside the key. So that's the first mechanism of note recognition, recognizing the note by feeling its key's color. This mechanism is fast, so you can be very quick once you are trained, once you're properly trained, you can be very quick at recognizing the color of the note and recognizing the sensation of the note, and once you recognize it, you already know it and you already know what note is it inside the key, okay? So that's a very fast approach to recognizing notes. Of course, it requires a bit of training, okay? The second perceptual mechanism of note recognition skills is slower than the first, but you can apply it more easily. You don't need a lot of skills, you don't need a lot of practice to apply it. And what it does, it will help also the first mechanism to develop. So the second mechanism of note recognition is recognizing the note by thinking of the scale. So you can recognize by singing the scale in your head or with your voice, you can recognize which degree of the scale the note is. So the second mechanism of note recognition is thinking of the scale. The third mechanism of note recognition skills is the fastest way, but it requires more training. The third mechanism is what I call referring to higher order familiar patterns, and I'm going to explain that. So, what does referring to higher order familiar patterns mean? Basically, we can recognize portions of melodies, so multiple notes at the same time, by recognizing a part of the melody as a portion of something else. What's that something else? It's whatever pattern, whatever portion of melody we have in our head. For example, if we hear a melody that contains a portion of the scale, of the major scale, and there are lots of melodies that contains portions of the scale, we can recognize, oh, that's a portion of the scale that goes from the second degree of the scale to the sixth degree of the scale. In that case, we recognized a few notes at the same time, simultaneously, by using the third mechanism, by referring to higher order familiar patterns. And the same thing can be applied if we recognize a triad or portions of triads inside a melody. So you see how you can apply this third mechanism in almost endless way. You can even refer to another melody, to a portion of another melody that you know very well, or anything like that. So now it's time to see a practical example on how to apply each one of these three perceptual mechanisms, so you know very well what to do with them. So let's make an example of the first mechanism of note recognition skills. Let's take this melody, for example. In this case, I can clearly feel that the last note is the tonic, for example. So, that's the tonic. And I can recognize it very quickly because it has the typical sensation of resolution of the first degree note, of the tonic note, okay? So you can feel that this is the resolution point of this melody. So that's an example of how you can apply the first mechanism in recognizing a note. And again, you can recognize all the notes included in this melody by using the first mechanism. But I'm just pointing out the easiest note that you can recognize using the first mechanism in the case of this melody. And for example, in the case of this melody, you can also easily apply the first mechanism in order to recognize the second to last note, which is the seventh degree in this case. So this seventh tonic, okay? It's easy to adopt the first mechanism in recognizing the seventh degree because the seventh degree has this very distinct sensation of tension that tends to solve on the tonic note. So it's this kind of movement. And it's very easy to recognize it once you're properly trained to do that. Let's now make an example on how to use the second mechanism of note recognition. Let's take the same melody, so okay, I can recognize each one of these notes by using the second mechanism. Really, what you need to do is just, at the beginning, take one note at a time. So, for example, let's take the starting note. I can clearly recognize this note by singing the scale in my head. So, da, da, da. I know this is the tonic, and I know that I made 3 steps. So this is the third degree. And in the same way, I can recognize the other ones. So the second note is da. I know that's da, da. I know that's the second degree note. And then we go on with the next note. And I can sing the scale in my head, so ba, 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 ba. And I know that's the fourth degree of the scale, so I know what this note is. And the same is applicable to every other note, basically. And now I've just shown how you can apply this mechanism very slowly, one note at a time, so you can properly understand the concept and how to apply it. But you can easily be much faster at recognizing notes with the second mechanism once you are properly trained and you can think of the scale very quickly and very clearly. Lastly, let's make a few examples on how to apply the third mechanism of note recognition skills. So for the first example, let's see a very simple melody like this one. In this case, I can use the third mechanism very easily by chunking the melody in 2 chunks. Okay, so the first chunk is this one, and the second chunk is this one. For the first chunk, I can very clearly hear that the melody is playing a scale stepwise from the tonic, da, 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 4th degree, okay? For the second chunk, I can clearly hear that the melody is playing a scale from the 5th degree of the scale to the 2nd degree of the scale. So it's doing like da, 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 okay? Okay? And I can very easily recognize 8 notes in just a matter of 2 thoughts, okay? So, first chunk and the second chunk. And it doesn't require thinking of each interval between the notes. It doesn't require anything like that. You just feel that the first chunk is a portion of the scale, and then the second chunk is another portion of the scale, okay? And that's just one example on how you can apply the third mechanism, but the thing is that the third mechanism can really be applied in many, many other different ways. So let's play this melody, for example. You can clearly perceive that this melody outlines 2 specific chords. The first chord is the tonic chord, so da, da, da. And the second chord is the dominant 7th chord, so it's da, 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 da. Okay? Just by feeling that one portion of the melody is the arpeggiated tonic chord and the other chunk of the melody outlines the dominant 7th chord, you automatically know which notes are played in this melody. That's another example on how you can use the third mechanism in real music, in real melodies. So, of course, the melodies I've just played are very basic, and this is just in order to be able to explain the concept very clearly in order for you to properly understand it. Then you can apply the same concept on real melodies just by focusing on, for example, portion of triads. You don't need to hear the whole chord. For example, just these 2 notes can be enough for you to recall the sound of the tonic chord. And similarly, you can apply this concept to every other chord you are familiar with. Other than that, it's worth mentioning that you can apply the third mechanism in almost an endless number of ways. For example, it might happen that you might internalize a very specific movement, a very specific melodic movement. Let's say this movement. Okay? Da, da, da. You can internalize this movement, and every time you hear a bit of this movement, a portion of this movement, or just the whole movement in a song, you can immediately recognize it. And that's another way in which you can apply the third mechanism, for example. So you can see that, the possibilities are really endless. Of course, many musicians are adopting these mechanisms without knowing that they are doing that. So it's really the way in which our mind naturally works, but the third mechanism can't be developed just if you're just starting out. It needs a strong preparation, a strong foundation on what I call the key scholars, and generally a good internalization of the tonal framework, because that's a kind of a more advanced skill that you can develop after you've already developed a basic vocabulary, a basic musical vocabulary, okay? And really that's what makes great musicians able to play melodies by ear effortlessly and to transcribe melodies by ear effortlessly in no time, without perfect pitch and without any other crazy stuff, just by using their relative pitch skills. And if you're interested in this, in the course, I explain a very, very gradual and systematic approach in order to develop these kinds of skills, in order to develop the first, second, and third mechanism. And there are very clear benchmarks in order for you to evaluate whether or not a particular topic or exercise is appropriate to your current level of skills. And if it's not appropriate, the benchmarks will also tell you what exercises you need to practice and what areas you need to improve in before going on with the next topic. So I really suggest you check it out because that might be something interesting to you. That being said, there's a last big component in recognizing melodies and playing melodies by ear, which is short-term musical memory. And This is not a video specifically on musical memory, but I just want you to know that short-term musical memory plays a very big role in recognizing melodies by ear and in recognizing music and playing music by ear in general. So for this reason, I encourage you to stay tuned because I'm going to make a specific video on short-term musical memory, and that's a very important topic for you to understand if you really want to improve your ear training skills. So I really hope everything is clear to you after having seen these practical examples, and I really encourage you to leave your thoughts and questions in the comment section below. The last thing I want to mention in this video is letting you know what are the two most common mistakes that people make when recognizing melodies by ear. The first most common mistake is using the trial and error approach. The trial and error approach occurs when a musician helps himself with an instrument and plays random notes on his instrument till he finds the note that matches the one that are in the melody. So it's a very slow and painful process which doesn't allow you to develop instant recognition skills, and the worst thing is that it doesn't help you, it doesn't allow you to develop the tonal vocabulary that is required to recognize melodies by ear very quickly and effortlessly. So that's a big mistake, and people think that they can improve a lot by using that approach, but really that won't help you get any further. So it's much better to use one of these approaches, even though at the beginning it seems that it takes a lot of efforts, but in the long term, these three perceptual mechanisms will help you develop the tonal vocabulary and will help you get faster and faster and faster at recognizing notes till it becomes second nature. The second common mistake is thinking of intervals. Again, I've made another video where I explain everything about why intervals are ineffective, why they aren't an effective way to approach ear training, and there are lots of problems with interval thinking in general. So I really suggest you go watch that video that talks about the most important scientific researches about it. You can find the link in the description section, and I really think that video will make the entire topic of ear training much clearer to you. Anyway, thank you for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and to subscribe. And if you're really interested in ear training, take a look at our website and our ear training courses. Thank you very much. See you in the next video. Bye.